All right, guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the build of the MIBO Swift Glider. We've been waiting for quite a while for this. Dang, this is awesome. Okay guys, so it begins. This is the first build video, not the unboxing video, but the first build video of the MIBO Swift Glider. As it sits right now, I have no idea where I'm going to begin. I'm thinking I'm going to start on the wings with the servo actuating system, but not 100% sure yet. I was thinking today maybe I'll start on the main landing gear, so we'll see how things work out, but it's exciting that this is actually starting. Alright guys, so since there's no instruction manual, pictures, or anything like that with this plane, we have to spend some time just figuring some stuff out. So that's basically what I'm doing now. I've already spent some time when I first unboxed this plane, figuring out how we're going to set the wings up and everything. Now what I'm trying to do is figure out the position of the control rods and stuff for the rear end here. Now, we did order this plane with the retractable landing gear, but one important thing to remember is that if you are going to be using this as a turbine glider, the fuel tank needs to go where the landing gear is going. So there is no need to purchase the landing gear if you're going to be strapping a turbine onto it, because you just can't use both. It just doesn't work. So we have no need for the landing gear, so we're going to find an alternate use for that or see if we can return it. But that's basically what I'm doing right now, is just kind of digging into this to see how things are going to go. The control rod for the rudder is right there. So that's pretty straightforward because it only comes out one way. The rudder sits nice and tight to the horizontal stab. One of the things I'm struggling with is just trying to figure out how we're going to make this elevator control rod work. And the reason for that is we've got the hidden blind nut and stuff underneath this bolt, and that's preventing the control rod from sitting higher. So I'm going to take this all apart right now and see if there's anything we can do as far as sanding that, if we've got any room to allow this control rod to sit higher. Alright guys, so the primary focus of this video is going to be installing the IDS KST mono systems. So these are the control systems for the servos. All right, so when we take these things out of the package, they are pretty straightforward as far as the parts go. I've never used these things before, so this is the first time for me, but I've been playing around with one and they're fairly straightforward. So you basically have the parts bag, which is bearings, pins, screws. Okay, we've got the main servo holding portion. This little tab here is actually for the back support strut. So that's what that piece is. We've got all the different servo arms. The cool thing about these servo arms is they've got these little angles in them that are all different on all the servo arms. So there's actually space for this whole system to work. So great system. This is the portion that gets installed in the actual surface. So in our case, the aileron or flap. And then we've got all the different arm lengths here, and boom, just like that, we've got all the parts cut out. Now so this is the one I've been messing around with, and I'll go through all these parts individually with you. So we've got the servo frame. Now these things are I guess you call them reversible, so you can set it up like this. You could set it up with the arm closer in that direction. So obviously there's multiple ways to set this up. Now these servo horns, if that's what you want to call them, they're just a press fit. The bearing goes either on the side of the arm or in the hole right there. When I first put this together, I just put it in the hole, stuck this together, and now it's kind of stuck on there. It's easy to get off, but that's where it likes to stay. So when this goes together, bearing goes in like this, just like that. Now, one thing I did find with this particular servo combination was, in order to get the servo holes to line up properly, I needed to get rid of that little ridge right there on the actual arm itself. So once I got rid of that ridge, it looks like that. And that allowed this to sit on the servo a little bit further, allowing the servo to sit a little bit further this way to have access to all the holes. So now the servo holes line up. So just one little interesting thing to think about if you're using these things. Next thing is our cross piece back here, our cross brace, so those all get screwed together. And then we've got our arm. Now this is the longest arm. I just took it out because it was the easiest one to get out that I knew I wasn't going to be using. So it goes together like this, and then the pin holds it together. Now this is our portion that gets installed in the actual surface, so in our flap as an example. This one does differ compared to the videos I've seen online. Basically goes like this. Again, pin goes through and holds all that together. Let's start getting this thing in the flap. To fit this in the flap, I needed to sand a little bit of this off, and that worked fine. One of the struggles we're going to have is this aileron area, because there is just zero room to work in this area. So I think with the aileron one, we might have to end up chopping this piece off and definitely sanding it down all the way. So we're going to attack that one in a little bit, but first thing we're going to do is work on the flap. So when you look at the structure of this wing, if you put a straight edge on the flap and line it up like that, our servo hatch is almost perpendicular to the wing. It's really, really close. So we can use this as our straight line. Now the actual unit itself in this flap is extremely tight. We want to get it snugged this direction as much as possible. So in the future we have access to these bolts if the servo ever needs to get changed. So you can imagine if you tuck this in this way and glued that in place, you now have zero access to the servo bolts. So just keep that in mind. So first thing I'm going to do here is, now that we've got that sitting in the right spot, I'm going to put some masking tape on the actual wing, and then that will allow us to draw our center line for the control rods. Servo in its rough position, I just marked out where that rod's going to be coming through the actual wing. Now you may not be able to see it, but previously I took my drill bit and I put a drill hole there so I can see it from the other side. And that drill bit hole is right in the center of my black marks there, my black Sharpie marks. So what we need to do on this side is we need to get rid of this fairing piece here, or the little, I forget what it's called, it slips my mind right now, but anyways, we need to Dremel this down to allow us to work in this area and to allow this piece to get installed. All right, so we got everything trimmed out in this area. I got the actual surface itself opened up, and then we've got the hole going into the servo cavity opened up as well. So when you put these things in, basically there's these little tabs here. Those get removed, but they're helpful for the positioning of these pieces. So basically we can mix up some epoxy and glue those in place. And some of the videos I've seen online have suggested just kind of tack gluing these in place with some CA, and then basically once that's done you can fill this area with epoxy, which I'll probably do that, because what that'll allow us to do is get this inserted, lined up, and then we can put the rod through and then get everything glued all at one time, so then we're not waiting an extra day just to do one little step. So I'm going to do that on this wing and we'll see what happens. Okay guys, so I'm just spending a bit of time getting this stuff lined up. So I CA'd the base into the actual flap, and that allowed me to get the control rod inserted in and put the pin in, leaving a little bit out there so you can pull the pin out. Now the point of this is to check the rod length on the control side. So you can see there, we are too long on the rod length, so we have to go down probably a rod length, maybe 2. But what we can do here is measure this. Right now, we need to go down from center to center about 3 millimeters, I think. So it's probably 1 rod size down. So what I'm going to do is pull this rod out, check it compared to the other stack of rods we have over there, and see what we can use. All right, so we went 1 size shorter on the rod and everything lined up quite well. We do still have a little bit of servo travel back, so we should be good there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this servo out. We're going to sand the top skin of the wing, and that's going to allow us to get this servo holder positioned in place. Now we're going to glue the servo holder in position with CA, and then we're going to glue the rest of that control horn attachment with epoxy. All right, so we've taken the servo out, and now we're just going to sand the skin with 80 or 60 grit sandpaper. So now we can get the servo back in, and then we can get everything lined up, and then just lightly tack the servo holder into place. So all I'm doing with this is I'm making sure the servo's tucked all the way forward and just getting the flap to be at its 0 position. And then what I can do is I can put a little bit of tape on the base of the flap here, and then we can put a couple drops of CA where we need to. Use a little bit of kicker. Or a lot of kicker. Good, now what we want to do is we want to pull this servo out so we have full access to everything that's in there. We want to pull the rod out, and we want to get the base glued in for the final time, and then we are going to mix up some epoxy and get the part that's installed in the surface glued in as well. All right, so now with the servo out, we are able to use our CA and get in all the crevices and everything on the inside and not have to worry about gluing the servo in place. Okay, and I've also kind of played a little bit more with the geometry and stuff, and I think going with the shortest size rod is going to be better. Reason for that is when the flap is fully back, the servo angle's kind of something like this, and then when the flap's fully extended, the servo's coming like this, and we want that to be more out, more of an angle. So we have a couple options there. We could put on the shorter horn. We've actually got 2 sizes. They make 2 sizes smaller than that, which is incredible to me. So if you look at the differences there, this is number 3, and then we've got 2, and then also 1, which is teeny. So very, very cool. Might switch it to number 2. We're going to play a little bit more with this. As I've talked about in almost all of my builds, usually doing the first wing or the first of a pair of something, I like to take my time, get all the geometry lined up. Then once we've got that done, it makes the other side, the other wing, a lot quicker to do because you've got the whole puzzle all figured out. So I'm going to play with this a little bit more. I'm also going to get some epoxy put in that end piece or the piece in the surface. Not very involved, but I'm just going to mix up some epoxy, put it in the end there, and let that cure, and then that's going to have to cure overnight. Okay guys, so what I'm going to do now is fill the area here in the horn with epoxy. So I mixed up some West Systems, some 610 material, and I heated it up with my heat gun to make it a little bit more runny. Now if you guys are a new viewer to the channel, new subscriber, and you've never met bent screwdriver before, this is bent screwdriver, the most useful tool in my toolbox. It's been with me for about 25 years, and I use this thing for everything. So Welcome to Bent Screwdriver, and Bent Screwdriver is helping us with installing all of this epoxy. All right, guys, we got a cool box today. I know what's in this box. It's from Jersey Modeler. It's a new fuel container and some cool things. Let's open this thing up. Super happy that this showed up today. My first Jersey Modeler container, it's an old one. I'm still using it today. It's got to be probably 10 to 12 years old, and phenomenal product. I've never really done anything to it other than charge the battery and change the fuel filter. So it's been an absolute dream of a product. If you guys are just using a standard jerry can with some sort of pump setup, that's totally fine. But if you want the absolute best fuel system, Jersey Modeler is the way to go. Now, they are available on my website, link down below, thelightersideofrc.com. If you go into the shop, there's a whole section there on Jersey Modeler, and there's lots of different options. So we ordered the best container, the biggest container, because who doesn't need more fuel when you're flying turbine aircraft? So let's open this thing up and see what is inside. So big container. It's actually the height of this box as well, which that's pretty cool. Wow. So great packing job from Jersey. Thanks, Dean, for doing that. I appreciate it. It's always nice when you get a package and it is packed well and protected. Very cool. All right, there it is. It's a monster. All right, so we got some other things in here, guys, but the primary focus of this container or of the shipment was the new 7.5 container. So this ends up being about 30 liters, 7.5 gallons of whatever fuel you use. So that's awesome. What a great container. Yeah, so 7.5 gallons fills it right up to there. So this is the first time I've actually seen one of these in person, so let's kind of do a quick overview of this thing. All right, so I'm starting with the cap. Now the cap has two different fill things here. So I think these are used in like car racing events and stuff like that, so you can screw the spout on. But obviously we've got the cap for that, and it's got a little O-ring on there, and then we've got the actual full-size filler. This is incredible how big that is. Wow. So they put a great product together. Very, very impressed. I've always been impressed with my Jersey stuff. So here is the pickup line on the inside. So you've got nice big size Tygon line. It's actually Tygon line. You've got a double pickup setup with screens and everything on there. That's super cool. So very, very nice. Love that. All right, so getting into the nuts and bolts of this setup. Now, Jersey also has a bunch of connection type or dry brake type setups. So those are also listed on the website too. So fueling ports and things like that. I'm actually going to be switching my jets over to this setup. And I've always been intrigued by it, but I've actually never used it before. So it's going to be a pretty cool setup. Now the new fuel containers come with both fittings, right? So you can use the dry brake port here, or you can use the traditional fitting, which has a multi-step system. All my planes right now, I just use a fuel plug this in, so it works for either of their systems. And then this on the container itself, like normal, plugs into there. So great setup. Now, this particular can, I ordered it with choose your own battery. So there's no battery in here, so you can basically power that with you know, like roughly a 9-10 cell type battery, and went that route just because you know, you've always got extra batteries kicking around, and I wanted to try the brand new setup. So this is what I encourage people to get, the choose your own battery version. And so the standard fuel pump here with the standard setup, the fuel filter and everything. So that's a great setup. The one I'm using is identical to this, as all the Jersey systems are. And I mean, it's over 10 years old and it still works beautifully. So, and then the last thing with the Jersey containers is all of them come with the power on, power off button, and then 3-position switch. So fuel supply to the aircraft, off, and drain. Now, the control here is an optional item. So this is a electronic speed control, and that allows you to adjust how quick the pump is pumping fluid. So this is basically their top-notch system. This is a great container. I love how thick this thing is. Really, really impressed with this. So the owner of Jersey Modeler, Dean, he reached out to me a few weeks ago. We set up the agreement, and now the lighter side of RC is a Canadian ordering point for Jersey Modeler products. So again, if you guys are interested in the best fueling system out there, check out the website, thelightersideofrc.com. I noted on the website, I say this to everybody, that we sell what we fly. Okay, so once we've got that filled, I've already pre-filled it before I turn the camera on. We wipe off the hinge line. And then, I'll try and show you guys there. That's what she looks like. So we just need to let that cure, and we're going to do that, let that cure overnight, and we'll do the same thing to the other side. Now, the aileron is going to be a lot more challenging than the flap was. The flap was fairly easy in the grand scheme of things. The aileron is going to be a lot more difficult. Still need to do up the screws and stuff in there, but yeah, so not looking forward to doing the aileron because there's a lot less room in that aileron, but I'm sure we'll make it work. We're going to use the same principles as the flap. All right, guys, working away on the aileron side. So I just want to show you here how much we needed to sand off. So you can see there, we put quite the angle on it. We're actually sanded down on this edge, but we had to put that massive angle on it. And that's all just to fit it in that space. So with that amount of sanding, it doesn't really affect anything. Just keep in mind that I've sanded this surface, sanded the back side, so when we put this in there, we do have plenty of good contact when the CA is installed. The only difference with this one is we are going to be, instead of running this all the way forward or towards the surface, sorry, backwards towards the surface, we're going to run it all the way forward just so we actually have room in this area to install. All right, so we've got everything opened up on the aileron, our channel cut for our mount, and we've got the opening and this piece all cut away. So one thing though with the aileron is it is so narrow that we cannot get our full cutout into the aileron. When we did the flap, once we got past the first wall there, it was actually hollow underneath, and this one it's actually all filled with foam, but it gets extremely narrow in that space. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim this down roughly about 6 or 7 millimeters like that, and that'll allow us to get that in all the way. All right, guys, everything's been tacked in place just like we did on the flap. Still need to put some epoxy in the actual horn, but we have nice movement. So we will definitely have to turn down the limits on the travel and play with our dual rates and stuff, because this thing will have a ridiculous amount of travel. But of course, we don't really have any other options because that is the smallest horn and smallest rod available. So, but should work beautifully. And this is definitely a tight area on this surface, but we made it work. There's going to be, when you put the cover on, so these covers just sit on like this. So when you put that cover on, it actually, there's pressure with that servo edge pushing against the cover. Now there's no problem with that. I'm just saying that when you run your hand across that, you can actually feel the edge of the servo, but we were basically as tight as we could get this way, and it's going to work out fine. The covers themselves, I'm thinking just to put those in place with a couple pieces of tape, because they're just really, really thin fiberglass. You don't want to be putting screws or anything like that in there, I don't think, and I'm just going to be using some clear tape to hold those things down. So next thing we have to do is we're going to disconnect the rod on this end, and then we are going to put some epoxy in the horn section. A little bit of a complaint about the aileron, or the amount of space. The flap, because it's just a wider opening. Over here you've got lots of space to work in, and pulling this pin out for the last time to put some epoxy is a lot easier when you got some space. So anyways, I managed to get the pin out of the aileron side, and that's all fine and dandy. So last step with this aileron is we mixed up some West Systems 610. We're going to just feed that down in between the hard point and the surface, and then we'll let that cure. And once that's cured, this wing will be complete. All right, guys, and that is everything for video number 1 of the MIBO Swift turbine-powered glider. Yes, it's still considered a glider if it's got turbine power, because you can turn it off and glide. I think this is going to be a very, very quick build. There's really, I mean, these things, there's not a lot of prefabrication done, but they're very, very simple planes. So I don't suspect this will be more than like 3 more videos, but we got the wing done. The other wing we're going to match exactly the same, and in the next video we're going to start with the fuselage portion, and I'm just waiting on some answers from MIBO on those things, so that's why we can't dive into any of that stuff in this video. But we'll be doing the turbine mount probably next, and some of the things like the cockpit and canopy and things like that. So it should give you guys a bunch of ideas that definitely applies to most other aircraft. And we're going to get this thing up in the air very, very soon. Looking forward to this. Just before I decided to film this, I found the fuel tank for the Swift. This is a 1 liter Nestle Pure flavored water thing. But I saw this sitting in our pantry, and I was like, that's the fuel right there. So anyways, that hopefully will work out, and we'll have a nice, decent sized fuel tank for this plane. And it's going to be fun. So thanks, guys, for tuning in. Again, if you guys are interested in Jersey modeler fuel jugs, don't forget to check out the website listed down below, the lighter side of rc.com. Check out the shop, guys. Lots of good things in there. Sweet wind turbines, Jersey fuel jugs, and just great stuff. Like I say on the website, we sell what we fly. And thanks for tuning in. We will see you in the next video.